People that walked in on their so having sex with another person, how did you react? Serious. I vomited. It felt like it happened even before it registered what I had seen. It caught me totally by surprise. No suspicions. No sounds coming through the door. I was walking towards the door, looked in the window as I passed, suddenly vomited in the grass. As I'm heaving, it slowly sinks in what I saw. I can't believe it. Totally caught me by surprise. I walk down the street to give myself some room to breathe. I sit down on the curb wanting to cry or something. I couldn't decide if I was devastated or furious. I sat there for hours. Thankfully it was only a girlfriend. Anyways, we lived together, and I got released early, military at the time, and came home. Caught her in the act, and honestly I think it was the dude's reaction that kept me calmer than anything. He started yelling at her, "Who the frick is this guy? And you said you were single?" She had lied through her teeth to the guy, and to be honest, I've never been one to hang pictures or anything, or to live like a slob, so it is fairly believable he didn't know a guy lived there. Anyways, I just started packing my stuff, and she tried to yell at me, and cuss at me and stop me from packing. She tried to take stuff from me, and dumped my bags, and I just kept my head down and kept packing away. Honestly, I think I took it the best way I could. There was other stuff like quickly contacting the landlord, and informing him I was moving out, at will tenant in a month-to-month lease, and getting out of there the next day. But my reaction was the only sensible thing I could do at the time, I think. He started yelling at her, "Who the frick is this guy? And you said you were single." Well, at least he reacted sensibly too. All too often people get mad at the wrong person in these situations. I didn't say anything. Just walked in and she said the typical, "It's not what you think." I just walked out and haven't spoken to her in over 6 months. I don't even miss her. It's nice to say that and actually mean it. Walked in on my ex. After 3 years together, with one of my best friends, at the time, took a double take and just stood there for what couldn't have been more than 5 seconds. I then just drove back to my dorm and literally lost my crap for a minute. I've never been one to actually be out of control of my temper, but at the time, all the emotions overwhelmed me as I fell out of shock. I will never forget that moment that I felt that I had no control over myself. It was both frightening and relieving. Literally losing your crap is pooping your pants. Girlfriend had been feeling sick the past few days. It was a slow day at my part-time job, so my manager decided to let a co-worker and I off early. Decided to surprise her with soup and a Redbox movie I picked up when I was heading out. The shower was running when I got there, so I warmed the soup up and sent her a text telling her I was downstairs with a surprise. While preparing it all, I heard a very distinguishable voice yell out in joy. That voice belonged to a pretty good friend of ours. Each step up the stairs boiled more anger, but finally seeing it with my eyes only brought disappointment. 8 months destroyed in 8 seconds. The amount of times she apologized and told me it's never happened before this didn't matter. I won't lie, it fricked me up. I'm still dealing with trust issues and anxiety from it all. They've been dating ever since and I never did see The Great Gatsby. Punched a wall that turned out to be a support column and broke my hand in 2 places. Not the brightest response. If I could do it all again, I would have just walked away and stayed away. Punched a wall that turned out to be a support column. Was really hoping that the building was going to crumble around you like a scene out of the Hulk or some crap. Sadness. Wasn't as angry as I thought I would be. I had suspicions beforehand. We had been together for a year. She started getting distant about a month ago. Walked in on them last night. It is what it is, but there's a massive hole in my heart now. I didn't catch her in the SCT, but I came home one day to find another man's boxer shorts on my bedroom floor. The tidal wave of sadness was overwhelming. She swore he had just changed into swim trunks and accidentally left his underwear. That story wasn't believable then, and it was less believable when she moved in with him after our breakup. First met my wife when I was studying abroad in China. We dated briefly over there and kept in touch online when I returned home. Eventually, the 2 of us got married and she moved out here to the States with me. Occasionally her family comes to visit. 4 years into the relationship, I catch her with her brother in bed. I didn't know what the frick to think. Is this a weird cultural thing? Is this guy even her brother? I got angry, yelled at her, stormed out for the night, and crashed at my friend's apartment. I went to work, came back home when she was at school, and the guy was gone. I go through her MacBook. Her Skype and email were saved. I find out the guy was her husband. The money we were sending to help her parents was being sent to this guy and her kids. We're since divorced. I haven't dated in years. I'm struggling with major self-esteem issues. No, I'm better off without her, but I miss the feeling of being in love and having a sense of belonging. I know poverty makes you do strange things, but I cannot imagine pimping your wife and the mother of your kids out, and for years. We'd been dating for over a year. She'd gotten a new job, and to congratulate her I left work early and brought over 2 bottles of champagne. No one was answering the door, but her roommate was in the stairwell outside their friend's apartment and heard me knocking. She let me in. We both walked together to their room at the end of the hall, and as her roommate pushed the door opened, my soul called out not to come in and I heard laughing. At this point, I moved on a kind of numb autopilot and pushed the door open. She was on top of him. She threw the blanket over her shoulders and looked back toward the door. I honestly lost my crap. I cried, screamed, went to absolute pieces. I knew the guy from other friends, and he'd abandoned a close friend of mine after their daughter was born severely epileptic. She wasn't apologetic at all. They were in love. I drove home, bawling the whole way. I haven't loved anyone like I loved her yet in my life. I drank both bottles of champagne at my apartment and packed a bag, calling my family to pick me up. I spent a few days with them. Being back home reminded me of the actual, unconditional love in my life. She and the guy deserved each other. In the end, she called me almost a year later while she was living with him and wanted to come over. She wanted to have sex, so we did. Then I detailed the whole affair in a message to him and he kicked her out of his house. Everything works out in the end, people. Well, I walked in on them sleeping in our bed. I came home early from a road trip with a friend of mine and walked into my bedroom, happy to wake her up and surprise her. For whatever reason, the guy had a Polaroid at the bedside table, so I took a picture, set it next to them, basically to say be glad I didn't kill you, and walked out. She tried justifying it later, but I think I barely said 10 words to her after that. Dude, the Polaroid thing. That is brilliant. She must have been freaked out beyond belief when she woke up to that. I wanted to surprise him on his birthday, so I came with some of our friends to his dorm, bringing gifts and birthday cake. When I opened the door using the spare key he gave me, there he was, balls deep in a girl he brought home from club. We just kind of stared at them in shock and they stared back, also in shock, and then we all left without a word, dumping all the gifts and cake onto his floor. He hasn't won any of his friends back ever since. That's the only time I've heard of a situation where the friends witness it too. Weird sense of justice that they knew too. I was on a trip and decided to come home a couple days early and surprise my now ex fiancée. We were not living together, so I was going to go to my apartment to shower because I took a red-eye flight and I wanted to wash off the airplane stink before I surprised her with some flowers. I walk in and I see a pair of shoes by the door that were not mine. I thought maybe they were my roommates. As I round the corner to my room, I start to hear moaning and heavy breathing. I thought my roommate was fricking in my room, so I thought I would frick with him. I burst through the door and said something like surprise sucker and find my fiancée getting fricked by her roommate. I guess their other roommate had people over, so they thought to go to my place, which they thought was empty. I looked at them and I think you should leave the ring and the key. They freaked out and asked what I was doing home. I told them that this is my place and I didn't have to answer to them. They scrambled to collect their crap and leave. In the process, she left behind her iPad. I decided to go through it. I'm really proud of that, but I figured, why not? The wedding is off now anyway. Turns out she had been sleeping with a bunch of different people for the past 6 or 7 months. Sounds like you were really lucky to have discovered that she was a cheater before you got married. I'll never understand why people who cannot be monogamous get married. It was about 2 years ago. He and I had been dating for almost a year, and halfway through that year, I introduced him to a girl whom I'd considered to be my best friend. I'd had a feeling he was into her, but she had told me she wasn't attracted to him. As months went on, I noticed they grew closer. They'd hang out without me. I'd catch a glimpse of her phone when he would message her, and he stopped letting me stay the night. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid and that neither of them would ever hurt me. One morning after a party, I drove home and decided to swing by his house. Her car was in the street. At 8 AM, he lived with his mom, so she let me in the house. I stood outside his room, and when he came out, I looked past him to see the girl naked in his bed. We sat outside for about 30 minutes and I kept telling him I knew it. I knew it was happening. He basically told me I brought it on myself because butthole logic. I never spoke to her again. I only spoke to him a few times to get my stuff. The girl moved in with him soon after. They recently bought a house, but a few days before they moved in, she left him for a girl. They were going at it so hot and heavy that they didn't even notice that I was there. I put a note on the bedroom door, got in my car and moved to a different state. I admire your cold efficiency. Came home to see them on the couch and he was quickly doing up his pants. She'd been blowing him. I walked to the bathroom, more to give them a chance to leave than to pee. They did. Years later she came to terms with the fact that she can't be monogamous. At least it wasn't just me. She's cheated on literally everyone she's dated. I know 2 girls like this. They need to either become swingers or hot wives or get into cuckolding, but for some reason they refuse to do anything but monogamous relationships. Well, I came home from work about 2 hours early due to finishing up my paperwork quite early. Then I entered the bedroom ready to take shower. Then it happened. And to be completely honest, I just stood there and stared at them as they stared back at me. She then said, "Babe, it's not what it looks like." I then started laughing in an obnoxious way and turned around and left the room. Then when she came out of the room, I'm guessing he left the same way he came in the window. She found me playing Battlefield 4 on my PC. "Baby," she said. I just replied saying huh. She asked if I was okay. I just said yeah, I'm fine. I guess she thought everything was actually okay and started to walk back into the bedroom. As she walked away, I continued to keep playing and just said, "Oh, and you have 3 days to get all of your things out." She tried to get me to take it back and started to get frustrated saying I can't do that. I simply replied I signed the lease. I personally pay all the bills and everything that is even involved between you and I has my name on it, not yours. So you need to get out. I would appreciate that greatly. She then started to cry and I just laughed. Some may call me heartless for this, but if you knew the amount that I had put into the relationship and how much I sacrificed for it, you wouldn't blame me. Came home early from work, noticed a strange car outside, found them sleeping in our bed, cozy as can be after doing the deed. They woke up to me closing the door and leaving. She called and begged me to come home. I said everything I had ever bitten my tongue about. Filed for divorce 2 days later. A month after divorce was final. I moved 1,000 miles away. She still wants me to come back and tells me it's the biggest mistake she ever made. People ask me why I even still talk to her. I say it's because I have to be civil. The truth is I'm still enjoying knowing she's struggling and that I won. Petty, I know, but frick her. RIP. Inbox. Thanks for the gold. Kind stranger. Walked in on my ex, not having sex with her ex-BF. Bit him asleep in his boxers on her bed, and her beside him. I had bought her a bunch of gifts because I had been away at school and was busy. Thought I'd surprise her. I guess I did. She bolted up as soon as I walked in. I put the gifts on the ground and said, "So, I bought you gifts. I guess I should just go." Left the gifts and walked out. She chased after me and threw herself in front of my car and wouldn't move until I came in to talk to her. The guy left while I was sitting in my car contemplating running her over. We went inside and talked. Decided not to end things. 2 weeks later, on Valentine's Day, she dumped me because I hadn't yet put the past behind me. She was crazy. Contacted me and told me she loved me still. 2 years later, after being engaged and pregnant, I told her sorry but things were over and I was in a relationship with someone I love deeply. My then GF proceeded to cheat on me and dump me a week later. My luck was not the greatest. Good news is now I'm married to a wonderful woman. The guy left while I was sitting in my car contemplating running her over. Nice writing. That's probably my favorite line in all of this thread. Yeah, I've been there too. I'm glad you've made it at the end. I was already at a low point in my life. I actually just got fired and came back to the hotel room where we were staying at. I reiterate, it was a very low point in my life, and went straight to the bathroom to take a crap. Hadn't really thought about why my girlfriend wasn't there. Sitting on the toilet, I recognized her singing. Through the vents, I could tell she was in the shower next door. Banged on the next door down for like 5 minutes before I heard the neighbor yell at her that it was me. I said open the fricking door and he obliged. I walked straight past him and threw her clothes at her as she was getting out of the shower. As she argued with me, Dusha McGee decided that's when he'd step in and shove me and tell me to frick off. I promptly lost it, broke his nose and continued to throw him around his hotel room. I left when he started screaming about the cops. I just took off my bloody shirt and started walking down the street and kept going for a few hours, all before noon. It was a crappy day. I honestly don't regret my actions. Don't get fricking physical with me after I discovered you fricked my girlfriend. TLDR. Just got fired. She was next door. Scuffled with the guy for a bit. Went for a walk. Glad you smashed that dude. What kind of clown would get aggressive after you fricked his girl? That guy deserves much worse. This was my first boyfriend in college. He was a lot of firsts, actually including the first person to cheat on me. It was my boyfriend's birthday and I was going to surprise him by decorating his room at midnight. He usually has work until 2 AM those days, so my plan was to go to his dorm room and decorate it. I knew his roommate was going home that weekend, so his roommate was nice enough to lend me his key. I have all the supplies with me and go to his room at 1 AM. I like to vlog things and was going to record the process, so I had my phone recording me entering his room. I swing open the door and I see him and another girl. I guess I have impeccable good timing because he comes all over her back as I open the door. And remember, my phone was recording all of this. I just kind of stand there. We all just look at each other and he starts to say, "Babe." Tears start falling down my face and I just lose it. I fall to the floor and start crying. He scrambles for his clothes and I just leave. I leave all the supplies there, grab my bag and phone, and just walk away. I went back to my room without saying anything. In fact, I never said anything to him ever again. He stalked me for a bit after. Fun fact, his roommate didn't know we broke up. Messages me a few days after telling me he thinks my ex is cheating on me with a girl. He says the name of the girl, which is not the same girl I saw him in bed with. TLDR. My first BF cheated on me on his birthday. I cried and left in silence. Roommate messages me, without knowing we broke up, that my BF is cheating on me with a girl who was not the girl my BF was in bed with. BF was cheating on me with 2 girls. Well, your ex's roommate was a good guy for telling you when he had suspicions. Came home from work early to spend a long weekend with my fiance. Put the keys on the table. Instant smell of sex and sound of faint moaning. For a second I was naively aroused, thinking she was rubbing one in. Walked to the bedroom and felt the blood drain from my face. Just felt like a ghost standing there. They hadn't heard me come in and I didn't know what to shout or do to interrupt them. Just walked back out to the car, and then the anger seriously kicked in. Went to the garage and got the chainsaw. Never starts first try, was my granddad's. I just wanted the noise to scare the living frick back out of them. Back to the bedroom doorway and started pulling the cord as calmly as I could hold my crap together. Instant screams from both of them. Pulled the cord a few times for dramatic effect and told them they had 5 seconds to get out of my house. The guy scrambled and got his crap together. She just fell to the floor and started crying. I couldn't take the pleading and crying, so I just got in the car and left, with the chainsaw for some reason. Love of my life turned into a succubus hellbitch in under a second. There was this girl staying at my house for a bit. She had family issues and never wanted to go home. We'll call her Erica. Every night, Erica would start crying when we were heading to bed, and my BF and I would stay up hours trying to calm her down. After a couple weeks, I kicked her out. My BF really didn't like it, but I was firm. We needed sleep, and this girl needed to deal with her family issues. 2 days later I was at work and my BF called to say he was staying home sick and wouldn't need a ride later. I felt bad for him, So on my hour lunch break I went to the soup shop to grab him some tasty soup. It took a while and I was going to use my whole lunch break bringing him soup. I got home and he wasn't on his computer, very unusual, and the bedroom door was closed. I opened the bedroom door and him and the girl were naked in bed together, not actively sexing, just naked. I poured the soup on them and left. He called me and said it wasn't what it looked like. She was keeping him warm since he had a fever. What an amazing excuse. She totally had to be naked to keep him warm, I'm sure. I told him he better have his stuff out by the time I got home or I was calling the cops. He broke into my apartment 3 days later to leave flowers and a note. I was 20 years old and dumb, so I took him back. My GF and I had a large group of friends. Many of those friends were bi or gay. One night she went to a party where most of our friends were at. I didn't want to go but then later changed my mind. Got to the party when everyone was loaded. Walked into bedroom and she's banging one of our gay friends. The frick. She cheated on me with a gay dude. I was obviously upset and didn't talk to her for weeks. We got back together for a few months and I finally just couldn't do it anymore. We were both young and stupid anyways. I laugh about it now. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.